Good day, my friends. Today I want to talk to you about how title insurance works and what's the difference between title insurance and the real property report. I myself am all for the real property report because it shows the location of your buildings on your property. It makes sure that everything complies so that there shouldn't be an issue down the road, not a major issue anyway. For the most part, it protects you. So title insurance works in the buyer's favor. It does not favor the seller at all. The way that it helps the seller is it helps the seller to close on time if they don't have a real property report. So in the end, it could come back to bite the seller. The seller could get sued by the buyer and through title insurance. So I think that having a real property report protects the seller and the buyer, and I think that that is the most important one. But I think having the real property report with a backup of title insurance is the ultimate thing that a person can do when purchasing a home. So how title insurance works, it's the standard insurance policy. It protects against future discoveries about a property, some title related and some non-title related. It's a form of indemnity insurance for a mortgaged property that covers the loss of an interest in a property due to discovered legal defects. As an insurance product, title insurance doesn't fix the problems, it provides insurance coverage for them. In other words, the title insurer has no obligation to do anything until a problem actually arises. And insurance companies, they don't want to do anything unless they have to. So when a problem does arise, the insurer can pay damages or actually fix the problem. It sounds complicated, but it's simple when you boil it down. So what does title insurance cover? It can cover future title fraud. In other words, if through fraudulent transactions and paperwork someone loses title to a property they legally own, title insurance can assist in getting title back. And it can provide gap coverage to buyers and borrowers, which protects their interests when a transaction is closing. There is often a gap of several days between the submission of the land transfer or the mortgage document to the land title's office and the registration of these interests on title. Lawyers cannot release mortgage funds to a seller until registration is complete and the title shows no intervening registrations. A borrower can arrange a title insurance policy quickly and it takes effect on the date of issue. It assures the state of title at the date of registration of the land transfer, which is the real estate trade or a loan document. The mortgage deal may cover deficiencies that would not show on a real property report, such as unregistered utility easements or builder liens, or matters that would be shown by non-land title searches, such as deficient corporate status may cover hidden deficiencies, such as underground storage tanks or underground septic tanks. So sometimes coverage will include known defects, for example, a fence in the wrong location or a deck that is too big for the property. Title insurance operates on a no-fault basis. No-fault insurance is when the insurance company indemnifies a policyholder for losses regardless of fault in the incident. But one thing I know too is that if you knew or the seller knew that that problem existed, they will not cover it. So be very careful, because you all know with insurance companies how they are about paying out. If they don't have to pay you, they're not going to. So don't just think because you have insurance that you're automatically going to have coverage. So be very, very careful. This is why having a real property report is so important. Examples of how title insurance can help. Title fraud or forgery. So here's an example of Sydney. So Sydney owns a residential property with clear title. His title shows no mortgage, and along comes Arnie. Arnie applies for a mortgage on Sydney's property by pretending to be Sydney. Arnie forges Sydney's signature on the mortgage documents and the lender registers the mortgage on title. Arnie receives the mortgage funds and immediately he leaves town. Sydney now has a mortgage showing against his property. If Sydney has title insurance, it may cover any loss or damage from the fraud or forgery, including the cost to defend Sydney's interest in the property. So that does happen in Alberta. And I think it happens more and more these days because criminals are getting really smart with that kind of stuff. So I think having title insurance, which is just over $300, just even for that alone, and it lasts for the lifetime that you own your house. So it's not that you have to pay it every year, it's just a one-time fee, and I think it's definitely worth it. Anyways, a non-title defect. After moving into an existing home, this is another example. Max receives a notice from the municipality requiring him to obtain a building permit for a family room addition the previous owner built without a permit. So now what gets me is that the previous owner would have known he didn't have a permit, and so is this going to get covered? In my view, I think probably not. Should the buyer have known? Somebody should have been looking out after the buyer. And if there was a real property report, that would have shown up, and because compliance wouldn't have been gotten. So anyways, so Max hires a contractor to inspect the addition. The inspection report recommends the demolition of the addition. So title insurance may cover the cost of demolition and the loss of property value or the cost of reconstruction. So may. So that's your big word in there. It may. And like I said before, we all know how insurance companies are. So here we have an unknown municipal compliance issue. So this is another example where Cindy purchases her first home, which includes a large rear deck off the kitchen that the previous owners built. After moving into the property, the utility company advises Cindy that it needs to repair an underground service and will be digging along its utility right-of-way. Much to her surprise, Cindy discovers that a portion of the deck is over the company's utility right-of-way, creating an encroachment. So she must remove this portion of the deck to allow the excavation that repair the underground service. An owner's title insurance policy, again, may cover Cindy's costs for the removal of the encroaching structure. Known municipal compliance issue. So here's another example. Norman decides to buy a house with a large 2-car garage off a back lane. Carl, the current owner, discloses that the location of the garage foundation, the garage foundation is too close to the rear lane. This creates an encroachment on municipal property. It may be possible for the seller and the buyer to agree to title insurance to facilitate the sale. The seller would purchase the insurance for the buyer in lieu of or in addition to providing an RPR. The buyer may accept title insurance with the understanding that the insurer can refuse to pay the claim should the situation arise. The seller must disclose to the insurer the encroachment prior to purchasing title insurance. Is title insurance the same as a real property report? Absolutely not. It is definitely not the same. I think, as I said before, that a real property report is always the way to go. An RPR, a real property report, is a legal document an Alberta land surveyor prepares that clearly illustrates the boundaries of a property and the location of improvements, such as buildings, garages, sheds, and fences relative to property boundaries. In other words, an RPR also has a stamp of municipal compliance that shows a home buyer what he or she is buying and that it complies with municipal regulations. Title insurance is an insurance policy that protects against certain unknowns. So certain unknowns, that's a key word, because as a buyer, it might be unknown to you and it would probably cover you, but to a seller, you probably knew. So if you didn't get a permit, you knew that. So what's going to happen is title insurance is going to come after the seller and you're going to pay anyway. So why not do things proper? Get your permits, people, because there's lots of people that don't get permits and they do it after the fact, and that can cause a lot of grief. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not easy. But do you want to do an addition like in one of the examples that we just gave here, where that addition has to come down, or you have to remove a deck or part of the deck? Like, that's a big job. Who wants to do that? So anyways, so even though it protects against certain unknowns, though they are not the same, both can provide some protection for a buyer. So notice that too, it is some protection for a buyer. So I don't think the only thing that it helps the seller to do is to close that deal on time. So comparing title insurance and real property reports. So title insurance and real property reports are not required in Alberta. Standard residential purchase contract in Alberta requires the seller or the seller's lawyer to give a real property report to the buyer or buyer's lawyer. So it is an insurance product that cannot fix problems, but rather gives financial protection if problems arise in the future. Provides information about a property compliance issues upfront, so issues can be dealt with before closing. An RPR with a stamp of municipal compliance is critical protection for all parties in a real estate transaction. May cover internal non-compliance issues that do not show on an RPR, such as a lack of building permits or failure to meet building code on renovations, and may cover hidden deficiencies such as underground storage tanks, but does not provide any insurance coverage, financial protection. The goal is to avoid problems arising later by having an RPR with a stamp of municipal compliance. So always, I think, in my opinion, spend that extra money, get your real property report, and I think getting title insurance on top of that is the ultimate and best way to go. You'll always be protected, the buyer and the seller. There will be a lot less suing going on, and I always tell my sellers, and I know some people have done title insurance, but I always recommend for your protection to get the RPR. And you know, if a buyer wants to get title insurance on top of it, I think they should. Anyways, that is a little chat about the real property report and title insurance. I hope you understood that and it made sense to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message or text me. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye.